get started?
Happy to get started. Thank you, Marcia.
Fantastic.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kathy Alm, the CEO of PATH International, and I want to thank you for joining us for the Window of Tolerance, Knowing When Self-Care is Critical webinar. We like to start these webinars with getting an idea of who is joining us today. Marcia will be putting up 2 polls that will tell us where attendees are joining from and what role or roles you have in equine-assisted activities or therapies.
All right, the poll for time zone is in. Please select one.
Thank you, Marcia. How are the results looking, Marcia?
50% Eastern so far, 17% Central, 17% Mountain, 17% Pacific, and 1% Hawaii. Way to go, Hawaii.
Right. Way to go, Hawaii. I know it's early there.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close it and share it quick, and that's what we got.
Very good. I just realized that we did not put an option for international, and I'm pretty sure we have at least one international member joining us. So we'll have to remember that for next time. All right, how about the next poll?
All right. And we can only have 5 lines, which is part of the interesting. So I could put Hawaii International, I guess.
Yes.
All right, the next one is up. Your primary role at your center or in the EAT industry.
How's it looking?
All right, so 77% of the people have 80% have voted, so I'm gonna go ahead and close it and share our results. Landslide for instructors and or ESMHL.
Yes.
But we've got all gamuts, which is kind of cool. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you for letting us know who's joining us today. And just a couple of logistical things before I dive into my introduction. If you have questions or comments, please use the chat feature. Marcia will be monitoring that, and we'll have a way to hopefully get your questions answered. And we'll also be using the chat feature when Michelle has questions that she's asking you all potentially to answer. And we are recording this webinar, so it will be available to our membership on our website. So that if you want to go back and revisit it, you can always go to our website and see this recording once it has been put up on our website. There's also one handout in the handout section. If you would like the handout in order to take that away with you, you can download it. So again, welcome to our self-care webinar. As I wrote in my CEO quarterly update a few weeks ago, everyone's world has changed so much in 2020. My world is very different than it was in December of 2019. Various PATH International initiatives needed to be put on hold in order to shift our focus onto assisting you, our members, certified professionals, and centers to navigate the impact of COVID-19. Ensure the PATH International staff stay safe and able to work remotely, and keep the organization healthy and mission focused. All of this within the framework of significant change in everyone's personal life, including my own. 2020 brought me the loss of my father in April, the loss of my longtime companion dog Morgan in July, and multiple trips to Seattle. And flying during this pandemic is a story in its own right. The multiple trips to Seattle were as my mom moved into an assisted living place and had both oral surgery and heart valve replacement surgery. I share all of that with you because I know my 2020 story is not unique. All year, each of us has dealt with loss, whether it's been the loss of a sense of security and confidence in our life and health, losing a loved one, lack of familiar routines, or any other change that inherently brings a sense of loss for what was. It's important to remember that none of us are immune to the toll change, even positive change, and loss takes. The importance of self-care and the need for immediate attention of this concept for yourself is paramount. The number of conversations that I've had with members and colleagues over the last few weeks reinforces for me that now more than ever, each of us must pay attention to what we need to do to take care of ourselves. We work in a service-driven industry. Each of you give of yourself every day in pursuit of providing services and care to human and animal alike. Each of you also gives of yourself to support family and friends. It is critical now more than ever that each of you take care of yourself. Taking care of others becomes impossible unless you also take care of yourself. My wish for you today is that this webinar provides you with information and tools to recognize what you need for self-care and put that into practice. This will allow all of us to live our best healthy life. I am very pleased to introduce our presenter today, Michelle Weed. Michelle is a PATH International RTRI, ESMHL, lead site visitor, faculty for ES4H and mentor online courses, and chair of the Health and Education Oversight Committee. Busy much, Michelle? She is trained in EMDR, trauma-focused equine-assisted EMDR, prolonged exposure, cognitive behavioral therapy, and moral injury intervention. She is a certified rehabilitation counselor, certified clinical trauma professional, and resident in counseling, currently completing her PhD at William & Mary in counselor education and supervision with a cognitive specialization in PTSD and moral injury. She currently works at the Farley Center as a trauma specialist, Trails of Purpose, and Dreamcatchers Therapeutic Writing Center. She is a graduate of the University of Kentucky with her master's in rehabilitation counseling, clinical rehabilitation, mental health counseling. Thank you, Michelle, for your time and expertise today. We are honored to have you present for us.
Thank you, Kathy. So I am going to share my screen. If you guys have any problems seeing me, please let Marcia know. She's going to monitor the chat for me. But I'm honored to talk to you guys about this. This is kind of my passion, is the trauma that we experience in daily life, and teaching people about the brain reactions and the body reactions and what we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So there we go.
You're good.
Okay. So hopefully I won't mess it up here. So it's not. So with this, here we go. It's not letting me do it. I want to know, what is your stress level? How would you define it right now? If you go into the chat, write up, what is your stress level? So just take a minute and do that. We're going to get back to that at the end. So we'll kind of see how we can change some of our language or on how to help them with defining where they are in stress. And so one of the things is, how will this even help? How will learning about a window of tolerance and stress response help? All behavior is communication. Everything that we do, we are communicating something. When we are short with somebody, we want the conversation to end, right? When we get angry, we want the conversation to end. We need a break. We need space. When we approach people, that's when we're open. So all behavior is communicating things. And one of the things to remember is that our stress response is a normal reaction to abnormal events. And we have a lot of abnormal events going on right now. And so a lot of people are experiencing trauma reactions, post-stress reactions. And normalizing that and letting them know that, hey, this is a normal reaction to abnormal events. We just need to get through this and recognize it. That being said, one of the things I have to teach is that it's not an excuse for bad behavior. Once we realize why we are behaving in certain ways, that's when we need to address them with some of the coping skills from today's lecture and from other things that you may know. One of the other reasons to talk about stress, to talk about trauma with your teams is that trauma and stress can block future goals and dreams. It's really hard when you're trying to get through today or trying to get through this week to go, this is where I want to be in a year. This is where I think we can be in 5 years. So getting through that and decreasing the stress will help. So why I started doing this is because, everybody talks about trauma-informed care, trauma-informed education, but if you do a quick Google search on that, it says pretty much like recognizing that everybody has the potential for trauma in their past. Okay, well, what do I do with that though? And it was really hard to find, what do we do with it? How do we see it within ourselves, and how do we help people on our teams and our participants? And so what you're going to see today, this is my disclaimer, what you're going to see today is kind of some concepts that are going to be kind of flipped upside down. It's try to take concepts that we use that are hard to explain to people or hard to conceptualize ourselves, and turn it around into a point where we can really use it at work and with our participants. So you will not be able to pass the psych test after this, and if you're taking Psychology 101, you're not going to be able to. That's not what turning these upside down are about. It's about trying to have it usable. So how trauma-informed services can help at our centers? Staff, recognizing the signs of stress in the staff, and starting to implement programs that can decrease stress. Participants, changing up our learning environment with the recognition of trauma-informed care, trauma-informed education. Caregivers, we set the culture of our centers, and that comes across to the caregivers. And when we are expressing trauma-informed care to everyone, that's going to bring more clients to us. And even for our horses, the more agitated we are, the more that they are. And so being able to slow down, be present, and bring down our stress level makes healthier horses as well. So the window of tolerance was a concept created by Dan Siegel, and it's to describe the optimal arousal level in humans. We're going to go into it in a minute, but I wanted to kind of introduce it, and then explain why we needed that. What's going on in the brain with stress? So the window of tolerance is all about how we can manage stress. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that happen in the brain. And again, it's going to be concepts that I kind of turn around a little bit so that we can explain it to our staff and to our participants in an easier way as well. Let me get back to this. So Bessel van der Kolk with The Body Keeps the Score, that is an excellent book if you have not read it, talks about how humans are designed for connection. And with trauma, and right now we're going through a traumatic period, the brain and body can prioritize protection over connection. And you've seen that probably with some of your interactions and all, because now you add a pandemic, factoring in with connection as well. So now you're breaking even more connections. Social distancing can feel like social isolation. And so now people's stress levels are coming up more. So when you think about the brain, this kind of gives you an idea of why we have these stress responses, okay? So if you look at the amygdala, it's the little purple spot, bluish purple spot there in the middle, little tiny amygdala. If you think of that as the alarm center, so every experience comes into the brain and say it comes through the amygdala says, hey, do I need to be worried? Checks in with the hippocampus who's saying, no, you're safe. And you're in your office, you're doing a lecture for a path, and you're fine. And so then that memory can go up into the prefrontal cortex and it just gets filed away. You don't have to think about it again, okay? You're fine. The alarm system turned off. Well, in a traumatic experience, the experience comes in, it hits the amygdala. The amygdala says, hey, are we safe? Checks in with the hippocampus. The hippocampus is like, no, we're not. I have no idea what's going on. Send off the alarm. Alarm goes back up to the amygdala. Amygdala keeps checking in with the hippocampus. It keeps saying, I don't know what's going on. Hits the amygdala again, and you have looping going on. And that's why how I like to teach the participants is that when this looping is going on, how well are you functioning? This is survival mode. This is, I need to keep myself safe. And when we have an extended stress response, and I work with people with PTSD, and so when we have these extended stress responses, that looping is going on. And it may be at a kind of a slow burn, and then something triggers it and it goes up again. And when that is happening, it's harder to function in all the other areas of your life, to function fully. And I'll go into that in just a minute. With the brain, we have responses, right? So we have a stimulus and a response. The wonderful thing about the brain is that there's neuroplasticity, which means that we can change the patterns, that our behavioral patterns in the brain, our thought process in the brain. And the reason I show this is to kind of think about when we are under stress, we end up doing that strong pathway, stimulus, response, right? And it's not always the best behaviors. It's not always the best responses. The healthier responses are more of those weak pathways, stimulus and response, but those take work, right, under stress. So they go down the strong pathway, and that becomes this superhighway. And the weak pathway, which is your healthier behaviors, can become kind of like the dirt road path that you're going on. Our goal in teaching all of the coping skills and things like that and relationship stress, you'll have stimulus, you'll start going down that strong pathway and go, wait, hold it. I know where this goes, and there are other options. And then cross over, we call it a detour sign, cross over into the weaker pathway and build that up to be healthier behaviors. Does that make sense? It's hard not hearing it from anybody here. So things that we might see in our staff participants or in ourselves is feeling fatigue, difficulty sleeping, being startled easily. Think about that looping, right? This is keeping you on edge. It's making sure that you're ready to respond at any time. And so the startle response is going to be a lot faster. Difficulty concentrating. The brain is kind of in survival mode, depending on where they're at. Feelings of racing heartbeat and anxiety, edginess and agitation, aches and pains. The stress and trauma is held in the body. Think about when you're really stressed. A lot of times we're like this and we're holding ourselves tight. That is the stress that we hold in our body. That goes along with the muscle tension. Feeling numb, sad, or emotionally reactive. This is a big one. When we are under stress, that anger, that fear that comes up under stress, we want to push it down, right? We don't want to express that, so we keep pushing down those emotions. The problem is we don't have the option of just pushing down the negative emotions. When we push down those negative emotions, we're pushing down, joy, love. We're pushing all those down as well. And so people might start presenting as disconnected. They might just seem like they're a little bit off on those days. Or they can also present as emotionally reactive. So when that looping is going on, and they have even a small stressor, they may react more emotionally. You might see more tears. You might see more anger. The other part of this is sensory overload. When we are stressed and we have all that going on in the brain, it's really hard to filter out all the senses, right? And only attune to what we need to attune to at that moment. And so it's kind of when your brain is in that looping and you are primed to react, right? And so all the senses, you know, the noises that are going on, a lot of movement around, can make you feel very reactive. All right, so this is where I'm turning things around a little bit. When you look at the typical development, okay? When you look at the typical development, you see that survival down here, right? When we look at it, kind of we'll turn it on to development, because it'll be the easiest, and then we'll go bring it into the stress response. But, you know, a baby cries and some get picked up and they get fed. They're like, oh, okay. All right, I'm good. You know, I can move up a little bit because, you know, if baby cries, gets fed, baby cries, gets fed, well, I'm safe. So this goes like this. They're only, you know, this much energy needs to be put towards survival. And look at the top of that of how much is left for cognition. If there's any teachers out there, think about in the classroom, the child that doesn't have any trauma, doing well in school, relaxed, you know, learns easily, right? Now you go to developmental trauma, or in the case of the pandemic, stress and trauma overall in our communities. And now look at the level of energy that is required that is going towards survival, right? And when we talk about survival, we're talking about just getting through the day, keeping it together, those type of things. And so when you look at that and you think about how much energy is left for cognition, how well are they learning? How well are they doing it at work, right? And so recognizing that in our individuals and in ourselves, of where are we? And think of this visual of turning it upside down of, hey, a lot of us have a much bigger survival mode than the typical day would have. So this kind of gives you what's going on in those different areas. It's catching up here. So when you think about when you're designing programs at work, when you're trying to problem solve with staff, or even yourself, if you're in school or if you're trying to get through some things and you're like, man, I can't concentrate. I'm having a hard time with pulling all this together. I mean, look at where that top part of cognition is of the abstract thought, concrete thought. All of those things. Attachment is up there. This is going to be affecting relationships. Right? So just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. And the reason we go through this is I'm coming at this for a little bit from the counselor approach, but we're able to use this in all of our activities and therapies. Okay. The bottom-up approach and the top-down approach. So what that is a counselor would go through the top-down approach of we're going to do talk therapy, we're cognitive behavioral therapy, we're going to talk about our feelings, but when you look back to that, to the development, and if someone is in survival mode, that cognition only has a small spot. And so we need to go back to the bottom and do it together, do the top down and the bottom up approach at the same time. And so for that, for therapeutic riding, driving, equine assisted learning, vaulting, any of that, we can do this with movement. So what we have to do is start to calm our bodies down. With that, it's the calming the limbic system is what they talk about. But the movement and the coping skills can help your clients calm, so then they can talk about what's going on. But if we start with talking about their feelings or trying to regulate their behaviors without regulating their bodies, we have a much harder time, and so do they. And how many of you guys have said this to somebody when they tell you, oh, just go reduce your stress and, go take a bath or go jogging. Anything. I want to treat the problem, not the symptom. Well, if you go back to this slide, we are treating both. When we are helping them regulate their bodies, helping regulate the stress response, and helping us regulate our stress responses, we are helping the symptoms, but we're also addressing part of the problem. And we'll go into that with the window of tolerance. So right now, your first coping skill of the day is a grounding exercise. So if you all can really feel where you're sitting in your chair, feel your feet on the ground, feel your back against the chair, and then look around and pick 6 red or blue objects or 6 round objects. Notice how when we stop our tunnel vision and we start looking around and scanning, that we become calmer. We become more in our bodies. And with this, I did add the shape in there because I was doing this exercise a couple weeks ago, and I ended up having somebody in the group that was colorblind. And so it was, he was wonderful and said, hey, can you change this a little bit? So it was perfect. So for you guys, I would, to use this, I would add in a shape. How's everybody doing? Marcia can let me know at some point here. Sorry, I love Brene Brown. And one of the things that she says is, if you can't measure it, does it exist? When we have little changes, it's hard to see the big changes that occur over time. And it's for us and for our participants. And so one of the things is measure everything. For EMDR, we use the subjective units of distress, and it's a scale of 0 to 10. 0 is no distress, and 10 is the worst distress. And distress can be fear, anxiety, anger, anything, any negative emotion. Where are they in that? And so for you, when you're practicing any of the coping skills, measure where you are before you do it. Practice the coping skill, and then measure it again, and see if your distress level comes down. When we measure it, we reinforce it as well. Same thing with your participants. Same thing with your team of, hey, where are you? 0 to 10. You also might find people that will always say around a 4 or a 5. And even ourselves, you might say, I'm at a 4 or a 5. Then I would ask you, where do you live? Where do you wake up in the morning? Are you always at about a 4? So that you can define your baseline. So the window of tolerance. The window of tolerance is how much stress, emotion we can handle at a given time. Your window of tolerance changes from day to day, from experience to experience. You may have a wide window of tolerance at home, and at work it might be different, or vice versa. And what it is within that window of tolerance, if you look at this slide, you can see that you can have your emotions come up and down. You can have stressors. You're able to regulate and come back down. You don't go into anger mode. You might increase a little bit, but you don't get into the point of not being able to function well. When you're in your window of tolerance, you're able to experience positive emotions better. You're able to be more creative, more relaxed, and the big thing is have connection. When we come out of the window of tolerance, this is when we end up doing hyperarousal or hypoarousal. With hyperarousal is when you come out of your window of tolerance and have a stress response, anger, you've got that looping going on, your brain is hyperstimulated, you are overly quick or intense reactions, a feeling of feeling unsafe, and overwhelming emotions. I'll go back to the other one, but I wanted to kind of flip it a little bit because we have the window of tolerance, but it's a little confusing on how they presented it, first presented it with one being below and one being over. This kind of shows you better of when you're going up for hyperarousal, and then you go beyond hyperarousal and shut down. Okay, so we go fight, flight, and then we go up to freeze. And what happens with stress is, if you look at the gray line on this, is that would be, you know, a normal healthy response, staying in your window of tolerance. Well, and the red marking is after trauma, after stress. It's not this nice flowy line and we're able to, you know, react well, we're able to make good connections. It's a stimulus response, goes slamming up, down, up, stuck, okay? Or stuck in freeze mode. And this can be pretty difficult for people because they don't understand why they're stuck. Why do I have this continued agitation? And the more we think about that, the more we kind of get stuck there. So to hit this home a little bit, I want to do an activity really quick. So I am going to, with this, if you look at the window of tolerance here, this is somebody with trauma. And you see how much smaller their window of tolerance is, right? This one would be someone without stress, without, you know, the normal level of stress, a wider window of tolerance, more room to adjust up and down, right? And this one has less room to adjust up and down. So with that, give me a daily stressor.
Go ahead, give us one in the questions. Or mine currently would be house repairs.
All right, so would that be a large stressor or a tablespoon type of stressor? Probably a large one?
Large, yes.
Okay. Daily stressor?
Late for work,
All right,
center funding.
hold on. All right, so you wake up in the morning, you needed home repairs. How well is the person with stress functioning?
Not well.
How about the person without stress and trauma? They're still doing okay.
Capable of managing.
Yep. All right, late for work. Okay. How is the person with stress and trauma reacting to being late for work?
Getting ready for road rage, I think.
Yeah, exactly. All right, give me another stressor.
Waiting for a COVID-19 test.
Oh, okay, big stressor. Okay. How is this person reacting at work right now?
I would say short, short with everyone.
Yep. How about this person?
Still manageable, but starting to get there.
Yep. All right, give me another stressor.
Somebody brought up politics.
Okay, that would be a big one. how is this conversation going about politics? Not good. All right, any other stressor?
Family member sick.
Okay. How well is the person with stress and trauma reacting to the extra responsibilities of someone being sick at home?
Not well.
Mm-mm. This person is also agitated, but they're not as bad. So give me another stressor.
Horse is getting sick.
Okay. All right. How about another stressor?
Kids and remote learning.
All right. So here's the deal. And if you were down here and you are working on remote learning, you've got all this space to work on the remote learning, right? You're functioning okay. You can still work on your job stuff, from home, and you can work with the kids, and you're not blowing up with the kids. Zoom, messed up again, you're just problem solving. But when you're at this point in your window of tolerance, you're over. And the thing is at this point, this can be something as simple as you're trying to get out the door and you ask the kids to put their shoes on and they didn't, and now you're a few minutes late. And so what's going on with reactions at this point for this one?
You're not functioning anymore.
Not at all. There's no connection going on, and you're blowing up, overly emotional. You probably potentially at this point might be going into freeze mode. So here's the deal. For all of us in equine assisted activities and therapies, we can help with this. You don't have to be a counselor to help with this. When we teach our teams and our participants coping skills, this is what we're doing. We're opening up the window of tolerance. We're not changing them overnight. We're giving them breathing room. Just that helps them function just a little bit more and a little bit more. And so that would be the big takeaway that I would want you guys to have is how simple things such as coping skills, it isn't about addressing the problem, you're right. It's about addressing what is going on in the moment, and how those little things can help. I mean, if you visualize being able to skim off the top and a little bit of room for breathing, a little bit of room for emotional regulation, it can make a huge difference. Any questions so far, Marcia?
We have one. What about nonverbal clients?
Behavior is communication. When you have the behaviors coming out, usually you're going to be able to see that they're under stress a little bit more. Sometimes people go directly to, there's misbehavior. Well, is it misbehavior or is it stress behavior? And giving them the coping skills, and I'll show you ones that you can do that you don't have to be verbal. They don't have to say anything. We can start regulating their sympathetic nervous system, their parasympathetic nervous system, and help them. It's the limbic system that it kind of calms with the body, so that they're more open to the lessons that you're doing. Does that help?
Yes, and they said right, but they can't talk about things.
Right, and so you're going to be going off of communication. about the behavior, the communication, depending if they have a communication board or anything. We're going to go off of body tension, their ability to follow directions during the lesson. Those are all telling you things. And you guys respond to it naturally anyway. Now it's just a matter of adding in the trauma-informed education piece. And I'll give you some skills for that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So for me, I come at it from both the equine assisted activities and services angle, and I work particularly with trauma. And so I just want to kind of give you an idea of how any of the activities can help, because before we can do anything with any client in counseling, we have to stabilize. It's stabilize, stabilize, stabilize. And what that means is giving them coping skills. We need to skim off the top and skim off the top with these coping skills and helping them regulate before we can start doing counseling. And some of the things that you can use for coping skills are asking people, teaching them about the window of tolerance, and asking them, where are you in your window of tolerance? With adult riders, adult participants, you can easily teach them about the window of tolerance and ask them where they are in it. Many times they'll be able to tell you, hey, I'm starting to come out. And then you can bring their, the challenge and support down to more of the support before you start the challenge again. Mindfulness, get them to stay in the here and now. There's a lot of mindfulness apps you can use on your phone that has music that you can use in the arena as well, and getting them into right now. What is going on right now? Not what happened earlier, not what's on the news, not anything else, just what is going on in this moment. One of the other things is butterfly hugs. We use this with an EMDR, but you don't have to be a counselor to do butterfly hugs. And so if y'all take your hands like this, can you see me, Marsha?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so take your hands like this, put it like this, put it on your chest, and very slowly tap. Breathe. Bilateral stimulation helps regulate the nervous system. And so when someone is agitated, they may start like this, and that's fine. Because even when they're doing it too fast, they can start slowing it down and having it help regulate them. Okay.
So Michelle, if we teach coping skills and we're instructors, are we crossing the line into counseling?
Not for coping skills, not for these type of things, because counseling is when you are going back into the past, when you are analyzing, the quick definition of it, when we're analyzing the roots of behavior. We're not doing that with this. All we're doing is doing in the moment, how can we help you relax? That's all.
Fantastic, thank you.
With that, we all do this anyway. All of us use rhythm, right? It's the same thing with all of these. It's rhythm. It is for the butterfly hugs, it's bilateral stimulation. And it is a rhythm. And the slower you go, the more you can bring down the nervous system. Make sure that you're breathing. Some people also like to do the butterfly hugs like this. Okay. And it's just to bring down the stress level. That's it. Tapping is another way of bringing down stress level. And what that is it's a version of the EFT tapping, but it can be used just for stress level. And it is about 5 to 8 taps over the eye, under the other eye. So you're doing bilateral again. Collarbone on the other side. And then there's this little spot in your ribs that's like a little bit more sensitive than others. It's like right about there. And you're doing that. And I think this might come from the horse side of the training. I always make sure everybody does things equally, so we're not one-sided. And so when you're practicing, okay. Did anybody try any of those as we're doing these? And so far, what is your response?
We did have a question about if clients have, say, spastic cerebral palsy and can't physically do those things, what might be some suggestions? So far, we're getting feels good to do those things.
Good. That's what's wonderful about what we do, because if we have especially if we are doing anything that is that you're riding, right? That you're on the horse and you have a nice symmetrical horse, and you can have them really sink into the horse, really feel the horse, feel the movement. And you can get the same response just by how you lead the horse, nice straight lines, and allowing them to relax and breathe with the horse. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Breathing, square breathing is when you do breathing for a count of 4 in, count of 4 hold, count of 4 out, count of 4 hold again. Okay. And so everybody try, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Okay. For a couple of the researchers have shown that doing this in sets of 3 can help. So it would be 3 breaths, rest, 3 breaths, rest. And then physical activity, get moving. When we're all stressed and we're like this, we've got to get moving. Stress and trauma is held in the body. The more that we hold ourselves like this, the more that we're going to feel the stress. And so take a walk. If you're having a meeting at work and it's just with one other person, can you do it walking? Would that help? Anything that you can get going with a little bit of movement will help. And then again, soothe your senses. And we talked a little bit about the senses earlier. So going back to how we can do this at our centers is for staff, check in with your staff. When you're in a staff meeting, everybody's stressed. I know we are stressed as well, but being able to go, hey, how's everybody? Where's everybody at 0 to 10 right now? And do we need to do some coping skills in here, stress reduction skills before we even start the meeting? It may feel kind of weird to do at first, but it really can help. Okay? Recognize the signs of stress in your staff and within you. And the hardest thing for all of us is saying, hey, I'm out of my window of tolerance. I need to take a break and I'll be right back. And we all have a really hard time with that. We may teach the coping skills and stress reduction and everything, but we have a hard time doing it ourselves. And I think that's one of the things that we can really help model for our centers. And also with that, it helps co-regulate. And so if we're agitated coming in, we're going to set everybody else off. But if we come in and we're calming, then it can help the others as well. For your participants, incorporate the coping skills into lessons. Have the mindfulness on the horse where they're really feeling the horse move. do games where they have to find, they have to slow down, breathe, and find, 6 circles or 3 squares, anything that gets them looking around and breathing. For your caregivers, the parents that are out there, give them handouts of what you're doing. Because what you're teaching in the arena, you can just say, hey, we did a little stress reduction activity today. This is what we were doing. Because if we're teaching the participants to carry it home. And then with our horses as well, is for us, when we're exercise riding, breathe, feel the horse move under you. Incorporate that in your warm up and cool down of really becoming present with the horse and slowing down. Any other ideas? And so, go ahead. Marcia, did you have something?
I don't. Just everybody's been commenting of how good the relaxation activities have been. And then potentially even when leading the horse also, people can get that regulation. So if you do have on-mounted students, perhaps even leading would work for them. Music has been suggested. And then somebody also mentioned that they're wondering if some of their nonverbal students might be learning this in outside therapies because they have a few that do that naturally. So they may be doing that, or maybe they have just learned what works for them. Painting horses, and doing any of the ground activities and heavy work. Those are some of the ones that have come in.
And the bilateral stimulation, like the butterfly hugs, can be the tapping on your legs, or just as somebody had suggested, when you're leading the horse or a participant is, really stress, feel your feet hitting the ground, and have that rhythm and feel their feet hitting the ground. Look around, see what's around. Because when we're stressed, our focus goes like this. We are narrow focused, and we leave out all the context of things. And so the other part of this is expanding that out. And so when you're leading the horse, looking around, noticing the wind, noticing the trees, anything that's mindful for that. But I have a lot of patients that use, I do inpatient, so they're patients, but that use these when they're taking walks every day and really noticing nature and all. So my question for you would be, what is your stress level, 0 to 10? And where are you in your window of tolerance right now? Anybody want to share?
Or for somebody, keep them coming in. 8, 6, 2, 4, started with a 7. Yay, Michelle. 2, 3, 3, 6, 3. Seems like most people are a little less than they might have been when we started. So give yourself a big pat on the back or a butterfly hug there, Michelle. 7 down to a 5, 6. 5 from 7. Great.
They're high for everybody right now. And try butterfly hugs. Just tap, breathe. Nice big breath. And relax. When you first start doing this stuff, it might feel you feel kind of silly, and then you realize, whoa, this works. And And so sometimes I know for myself, I'm driving to work and I'm tapping on my legs as I'm driving with one hand, right? Just to bring down my stress level and get into the zone. So anytime that you can do tapping, I have patients that call me a year after I've seen them and taught them this and said, hey, I was, walking the halls at work yesterday, and I just wanted to say thank you. It works, when they were doing their own bilateral stimulation with that. So, any questions?
Throw them in the question box, and we'll have time to go through a few. We are just about at 12:30, but Michelle is available to stay on for a few extra minutes. And then if there are a lot of questions that we do not get to, I will send them to Michelle, and we will get them put up as a document with the copy of the recording of the webinar. No questions, just a huge thank you. Michelle, you're amazing. I just thought, you'd like to hear this stuff. Any more resources so you can recommend or good books?
I really like, I was hoping I had it in here. I love The Body Keeps the Score. That I think really helps understand what's going on with the brain and what's going on with the body. My practice changed when I started incorporating body work and simple things like tapping. And even within the therapeutic riding, incorporating the movement and the bilateral stimulation and really becoming aware of that. So Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, would be my number one. And then I can post some because trying to think right now and my brain just went
Yeah, if you want to maybe jot a quick resource list, Michelle, we can then add that to the area where we were going to post the recap of the webinar.
Okay.
There was somebody that mentioned that they know people that tap on surfaces. Does that help as well for the regulation versus tapping on themselves?
That would be a good question. I would imagine that if they're doing it with their hands, they're still getting the bilateral stimulation. It's just their hands, right? If they're using both hands or both feet. I have quite a few people that will use their feet. They'll tap on the ground or they'll curl their toes if they're in a meeting, as long as they don't get toe cramps. Because nobody can tell that they're a little bit stressed and they're using relaxation techniques. So there's any way that you can do the bilateral stimulation on both sides of the body helps.
One participant said that they have a veteran that likes to tap on the horse, but the horse is irritated, so they're looking for help.
That would be really interesting because I would ask him if he would tap on his own legs. If he is able to on his thighs, he could tap instead of tapping on the horse. And my assumption is he's on the horse, so tell me if he isn't. He can tap on his own thighs and see what he thinks about that. Because it's also an educational point for him. If it's irritating for him how he's touching, if tapping on his own leg. Then this is also irritating the horse. But yeah, I would have him do it the same exact thing on himself and see what he thinks.
Fantastic. Let's see. And then somebody offered that tapping can actually be effective for de-stressing the horses. So I think it's finding that magic connection.
That's true, isn't it? The touch.
And then they responded that the veteran does it even standing next to the horse. So I suppose it might even be a good opportunity to discuss having him tune in to how another is reacting.
Well, and that's part of teaching them about what's going on with the brain and connection right there. He's not in tune with the horse. He's not making that connection. And so there'd be a good opportunity.
We had a couple other suggestions. When the Body Says No by Gaber Mate, any Brene Brown books. And then just FYI, everybody will make a copy of the chat available for download also in addition. So then you can look at some of these suggestions and other questions and other answers that people have had throughout as you rewatch the webinar, because I'm guessing that many will probably rewatch it again. And then let's see, we have a question about self-stimming, individuals with autism using self-stimming activities, which, and then how does this work with what you are teaching?
That's a great question. And that you have to find that fine line, right? If they are self-stimming because their stress level is really high, and you're able to use the horse's movement nice and smooth to bring down their agitation level, great, perfect. And hopefully that would decrease the stimming so that you can get on with the lesson or the therapies that you're doing. And so really it's a matter of what's going to work for them in your experience with them. So I don't have a good solid answer for you there.
Do you have any suggestions on group activities for self-care and something to help de-stress personnel?
The tapping, the butterfly hugs, I teach in group. I teach the tapping in group. The mindfulness activities of really feeling the horse underneath you, of feeling your feet on the ground when you're leading the horses, mindful grooming, and switching hands, all of that for the groups as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last call for questions. I'm seeing none. So just some more great presentations and thank you. So I would also, on behalf of PATH International, like to thank you, Michelle, for all of your work for this webinar and for helping us get tuned in to maybe even if it's just language that we can commonly use together to help people understand where folks are at and that day without having to say, I'm really stressed, but you can just define it as something as simple as, I don't have much left. My window of tolerance is slim today. I think that's fantastic. So thank you again, Michelle. I will follow up with you afterwards. Thank you everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it. Make sure you'll notice that we gave 1.5 CEUs for CR for this. So our thought with that is please do some homework. Do some of these things with yourself, maybe if you're teaching this afternoon or if you have a staff meeting coming up, maybe do some of these exercises and reflect a little bit on putting this into play at your program and with other people you know, maybe even your family. So thanks again, Michelle, we really appreciate it. And give us a week to get this recording put up and everybody be well.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you everyone for joining us.